I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, well, with the Labor Day weekend now behind us, by the way, I must say it was a wondrous weekend as my wife and I, with our entire family, celebrated the wedding of our son, Ari, to a spectacular young woman, Lindsay, and everyone at the ceremony where I was just privileged to be the Masada Kedushin. All of us at the chuppah knew we were in the presence of a true zug min hashamayim, a match from heaven. So I'm still on a real high. I'm also on a high because with the summer now over, we begin an exciting brand new season here on JBS. We have some wonderful programming lined up for you, beginning with Mordechai Kedar tonight, talking about the world of Islam and Jerusalem. On Wednesday night, I'll be sitting with former Democratic Congressman from New York, Stephen Israel, who's about to host an important conference on anti-Semitism at LIU Post on Wednesday, September 13th. This Sunday night, on our Jewish Film Festival at 9 p.m., we'll be premiering a fabulous new documentary film by Gloria Greenfield entitled Body and Soul, The State of the Jewish Nation. And next week on Monday, Peter Beinart and Tuvia Tenenbaum debate the quality of America today. And on Tuesday night, Myron Sugarman has a most entertaining and eye-opening exploration of the Jewish mob, followed by next Wednesday, L'Chaim, with Charles Cohen, producer of a beautiful film that traces the survival of a Jewish family in Nazi-occupied Prague. It's entitled Red Trees, which has its theatrical release on Friday, September 15th at the Quad Theater and Lincoln Square Plaza here in New York City, and in Greater Los Angeles at the Lamel Royale in Encino and at Regal West Park in Irvine. And there'll be much, much more wonderful programming. And I'm so happy that we're now joined by viewers on Fios by Verizon who are watching JBS on channel 798. Welcome to you. Welcome you to the JBS family. And now to kick off our new season in prime time, we are joined on our JBS phones by a man who has been and continues to be one of the most courageous voices on both the American and Jewish scenes. He's been a champion of civil rights, human rights, America's First Amendment constitutional principles, and America's legal system. And he is the most eloquent voice representing and defending the state of Israel today. He is Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School after some 50 years, where he was the Felix Frankfurter Professor of Law. And he is the author of 36 books, double chai, and his current one is entitled Trumped Up, How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy. It's always a great pleasure to welcome back to JBS Alan Dershowitz. Alan, I know how you're besieged by requests. Thank you for making time for us once again.
I always am happy to talk to you because you have such good questions and such intelligent listeners. But I want to start by wishing you a hearty mazel tov for the wedding of your son. Nothing could be a nicer way to celebrating Labor Day, and I hope it brings forth great happiness and many descendants, and much that you can continue to be proud of.
Thank you. You are so lovely. I appreciate your words very, very much. Where to begin, Alan? There's so much strum and drum in the Jewish community these days. Most of it, Alan, having to do with Donald Trump. And you, Alan, somehow you're in the middle of this firestorm because you've taken some pretty strong positions on a number of major controversial issues in the news. So let's begin with Charlottesville and the president's statements in the aftermath of that horrible event. How do you assess Donald Trump's response both on the Saturday and then the Monday following?
Very mixed. Because the right-wingers who demonstrated, the neo-Nazis and the Klanspeople, because they said that they were doing this in his name. David Duke said he was doing this to help the Trump program, or Richard Spencer said the same thing. Because of that, the president had a special obligation to renounce the right, to distance himself from it, and not to, at that point, make a moral equation. La kol zaman, it says in Ecclesiastes, to everything there is a season, to everything there is a time. That was the time for President Trump to single out the neo-Nazi and KKK right, because they spoke in his name. People like me on the left, we're the ones who have to attack the extremists on the left, the Antifa, which are a bunch of radical extremists, anarchists who want to bring down America, other groups that also used violence. But I think it's up to the people on the centrist right to attack the hard right, and people at the centrist left, like me, to attack the hard left. So although the president may have said some of the right words, the music wasn't correct and the timing wasn't correct.
Well,
he should have focused exclusively on the extreme right because they spoke in his name, and left it to people like me and others to attack the hard left.
Okay, I think you say it so perfectly. And when I heard his comments initially, and I'm watching them with my wife Ruth, there were some of his comments, Alan, which I thought were very beautiful. But I said to her, it was my instinct, I'm surprised he didn't mention by name neo-Nazis, KKK, white supremacists. Now,
he did ultimately.
And that's what I want to ask you. On the Monday after the weekend in Charlottesville, and only after he had learned about the running down of a crowd that was there, including the murder of a woman, Donald Trump did come out on Monday and explicitly condemned, in no uncertain terms, the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists. And I want to show this to our audience, and then I want your response to this. Here's what Donald Trump said on Monday.
I just met with FBI Director Christopher Wray and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. The Department of Justice has opened a civil rights investigation into the deadly car attack that killed one innocent American and wounded 20 others. To anyone who acted criminally in this weekend's racist violence, you will be held fully accountable. Justice will be delivered. As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. And as I have said many times before, no matter the color of our skin, we all live under the same laws. We all salute the same great flag. And we are all made by the same Almighty God. We must love each other, show affection for each other, and unite together in condemnation of hatred, bigotry, and violence. We must rediscover the bonds of love and loyalty that bring us together as Americans. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. We are a nation founded on the truth that all of us are created equal. We are equal in the eyes of our Creator. We are equal under the law, and we are equal under our Constitution. Those who spread violence in the name of bigotry strike at the very core of America. 2 days ago, a young American woman, Heather Heyer, was tragically killed. Her death fills us with grief, and we send her family our thoughts, our prayers, and our love. We also mourn the 2 Virginia state troopers who died in service to their community, their Commonwealth, and their country. Troopers Jay Cullen and Burke Bates exemplify the very best of America, and our hearts go out to their families, their friends, and every member of American law enforcement. These 3 fallen Americans embody the goodness and decency of our nation. In times such as these, America has always shown its true character, responding to hate with love, division with unity, and violence with an unwavering resolve for justice. We will defend and protect the sacred rights of all Americans, and we will work together so that every citizen in this blessed land is free to follow their dreams in their hearts and to express the love and joy in their souls. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
Alan, there were many things he said there that if it had been Barack Obama's face, I would not have been surprised. I thought some of it was beautiful. And again, he finds neo-Nazis, KKK, and white supremacists repugnant. Do the words that Donald Trump spoke on Monday count for anything for you?
Yes, of course, and they were perfect words. And when he sticks to his texts, he can be very presidential. And I thought those words could have been delivered by any American president and would have been welcomed. The problem is, after that, he then went and said something like, and there are good people on all sides and, bad people on all sides. He went back to condemning the left as well. And the left deserves to be condemned. But as I said, there's a time for everything. So when you take those words and when he's scripted, he's very good. When he goes off script sometimes and adds a few things, it can then have the impact because the press obviously reports this very selectively. CNN didn't run in whole part, at least repeatedly didn't run what you've just read.
That's right.
Fox
That's right.
did.
Yes.
MSNBC probably didn't. So we get very selective reporting by the media. And if you pick those words, nobody could be critical of those words. But when you then go forward and pick other words, then you can understand at least why there was some criticism. I do think some of the criticism was overblown, particularly by omitting some of the positive things he said. But Donald Trump has a way of saying positive things and then somehow taking it back. For example, take what we're talking about now, DACA, the immigration issue. When he was first sworn in, he said to the people, the dreamers, you have nothing to worry about. I have a big heart. You'll all be okay. That was perfectly good. And now he seems to have taken back the DACA proposal that President Obama put forward. But what I'd like him to do now is go on television and say, look, I took back DACA because I think it was maybe unconstitutional because it's something Congress should do, not the president should do. Reasonable people could take that position or disagree with that position. That's not the important thing. What he should say now is, because this is Congress's job, I promise you I will support it. I will not veto it if Congress passes it. I would like to see Congress enact something that will protect the 800,000 young people who came here through no fault of their own. They were brought here as infants, many of them. Many of them have known no other country in the world. Many of them have siblings who were born here and are therefore citizens, so we would be breaking up families. So I think the president can say what he wants to say about the constitutionality of what President Obama did, but then he should say, if Congress passes it, I would support it. I urge Congress to pass it, and I would never veto it because it's good for America to have these people living their lives as Americans. And, I hope he does that.
I understand, and you say it again very, very well. You talk about how there's the scripted Donald Trump, and then he seems to undermine some of what he says when he goes off script. Why is that? In your mind, is Donald Trump a racist?
Oh, no. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe he's a racist. I don't believe he's an anti-Semite. I don't believe he's a bigot. I don't believe he's a sexist. He's a flawed human being like all the rest of us. He's said and done things that I'm sure he wishes he hadn't said and done. But I don't believe that he's that. I think he is a politician. And he's a politician who's given scripts to read, but he's a very emotional and passionate man who has his own strong views that he's expressed for many, many years. Remember, he never had to report to a board of directors or a corporate board. He was always in charge of his business. So he says what he thinks. And when he's given a script, he'll look at it and he'll read it. And then he'll add things like, and there are good people on all sides, not understanding fully perhaps how that would be taken by his opponents to mean or suggest that he's supporting some Nazi and Klan members. I don't think that's what he meant. I think
agree.
he meant there are good people who are against having the monuments torn down.
Exactly right.
And there are some good people
Yes.
against that, including friends and relatives of mine. And there are some good people on the other side. That's why we have in a democracy the right to express different points of view on that. I take myself a medium point of view. I don't want to ever tear down a statue or destroy a statue. I want to put them in museums where they can be used as educational props to help teach people about the racism in America. I wouldn't have even, if it was my choice, have knocked down Saddam Hussein's statue. There are statues I wish weren't up there. The statue of Khmelnytsky, which is at the center of Kiev, Khmelnytsky, who was a mass murderer of Jews and who is still celebrated in almost all of the Ukraine. But I would move that to a museum, to a Jewish museum, perhaps, in which the history of Khmelnytsky could be taught to young people or young Ukrainians. But I don't believe in destroying art, even if it's art of very, very bad people.
And I want to follow up on this. Are you saying that you would not have the statues of Robert E. Lee or Stonewall Jackson removed from southern cities?
Well, Robert E. Lee isn't even a close question. Robert E. Lee, in many ways, was a great hero. After the end of the Civil War, he was the one who told Southerners not to engage in guerrilla warfare, not to continue the fight. He was praised by many in the North. He himself lived his life from many parts of his life in the North. He was a great soldier. He was the head of West Point. He was a distinguished soldier. In general, we don't hold soldiers responsible for the political actions of their leaders. So Lee has always been a very complicated case. His wife did own slaves, very complicated, but I certainly would never tear down a statue of Lee. I might move it from the center of town. I might move it to a museum. Calhoun, they just renamed Yale Calhoun College after a woman in the military eliminating Calhoun. You know, if you can eliminate Calhoun College, you really have to eliminate Lowell House at Harvard. President Lowell, who has a house named after him at Harvard and a lecture hall named after him at Harvard, was a horrible racist, a vicious anti-Semite. He was the one who introduced the quotas against Jews. He hated gays. He hated Catholics. He hated many, many other groups of people. He was a major hater. There are several buildings at Harvard named after people who have had long histories of bigotry. The one thing you can't do is selectively knock down statutes that offend one group of Americans without having a process. Yale now does have a process for deciding which other statutes come down, which halls are renamed, who you name buildings after. All of those have to be part of a process. It can't be just a one-off where, because there's pressure, you change the name of one college but not of other colleges.
I understand, and I think everything you say is what we've been saying for quite some time. Look, Alan, coming back one more time for one more moment to Charlottesville.
Sure.
What I hear all the time people saying is that Donald Trump, the reason why he didn't come out against Nazis, KKK, white supremacists on the Saturday, and why he did, after that beautiful speech he gave, again, talk about issue on both sides, is that he's playing to what people say is his white supremacist base. What's your analysis?
I don't know the answer to that question because I can't psychoanalyze either the president or Gorka or Bannon. Politicians make political judgments. If that was the decision, and I doubt it was, but if it was, it would be foolish. You don't win elections, fortunately, in America based on white supremacist voters. White supremacists tend to be located largely in states that are not close question states. So I don't think elections are won by pandering to white supremacist voters any more than I think on the left. Elections are won by pandering to the Susan Sarandon hard left hate America voters. Mm-hmm. So I think elections are won at the center, and so I don't think Donald Trump's a foolish man. So I doubt that he made a calculation in his mind that he wanted to maintain support among the thankfully small number of white supremacists, anti-Semites who still plague this country. Look, every country has anti-Semites, racists, and bigots. We're not unique in that regard, and every president has an obligation to distance himself or herself from what the haters want them to say. David Duke today is not welcomed on any college campus. No college campus would ever host a David Duke. Tragically, David Dukes on the left are welcomed on college campuses. You have virulent anti-Semites, virulent haters on the left who are welcome today on university campuses and do speak without any interruption. By the way, no speaker should be interrupted. But Students for Justice Palestine have a history of interrupting pro-Israel speakers, including me. And now they've been suspended and put on probation at least one university for having a long history of trying to stop pro-Israel speakers from speaking. So we have to have neutral standards. We have to have principles that apply equally on all sides, and that's what I'm looking for. And one of the only reasons I regret retiring from Harvard after 50 years is I'm itching to get back in the fight to make sure that we have a single standard of speech and justice on university campuses.
But don't worry, you're in the fight.
Alan, as long as I'm on your show, I'm in the fight.
Oh, you're very sweet. Alan, a number of Jewish organizations, including the Rabbinical Assembly, which represents rabbis of the conservative movement in America, and Rick Jacobs' URJ, which is the Organization of Reform Synagogues in America, have said they will not participate in the traditional annual high holiday phone conversation with the president. What do you think of that decision?
I don't think that's right. I think that rabbis should be willing to speak truth to power. They should be willing to engage in conversations with our president. Dine Malchuta Dina, the law of the land is our land. We respect the office, even if we disagree with the president. And I do not believe it was the right decision to make. And by the way, rabbis, with all due respect to you, rabbis do not speak for the Jewish community. They speak for themselves. They don't take votes among their congregants. They don't ask their congregants whether this is the right decision to make, and we shouldn't have Republican rabbis and Democratic rabbis, or Republican rabbis who are willing to get on the call, Democratic rabbis who are not willing to get on the call. That shows a divided people. Every rabbi should continue the tradition of being on the call with the president and being on the calls with others with whom we agree, with whom we disagree. I think we have to show our unity, our willingness to speak truth to power. That's certainly the message I always got from Elie Wiesel when he went and spoke to President Reagan about not going to Bitburg to celebrate the SS. He did it. He didn't refuse to talk to him. He spoke to him directly. And I think that's the way rabbis should deal with a president with whom they disagree.
Oh, good for you. During the Obama years, I remember so clearly you're coming on JBS and warning the Jewish community, don't make the president an enemy.
Yeah.
What does it mean that so many Jewish leaders have decided Donald Trump is literally their enemy?
They have no right to do that because they don't speak for the Jewish community. They have no right to turn a president against an entire group of people. I don't think the president's going to turn against the Jewish people because a few hundred rabbis want to do that. But remember, too, there are rabbis who have turned against the state of Israel. There are rabbis who have turned against, many values that many Jews hold. It was Theodor Herzl who said in his great book, The Jewish State, the rabbis should remain in their temples and should preach. The tragedy is in Israel. They sit in the parliament and they determine governmental policies and they have too much influence on marriage and other family affairs and divorce. I think the role of the rabbi should be to preach and teach and not be deeply involved in specific partisan political activities.
Okay. I only have about a minute left with you, so you have to give me a very brief answer. But I may not speak to you again before the high holidays. So talk to me. There are many Jews, Alan, who are sure that Donald Trump colluded with the Russian government, Vladimir Putin, to discredit Hillary Clinton and throw the election to Donald Trump. Two questions for you, and then you answer them as one. Have you seen, Alan, any evidence of such collusion? And what do you feel right now about FBI Director James Comey, who seems to have been preparing a document clearing Hillary Clinton of any wrongdoing in the email issue before the FBI interviewed Mrs. Clinton and 17 relevant witnesses? I lump them together only because there is such politicization right now in the Jewish community. But what do you think about collusion, and how do you feel about James Comey?
Well, as you know, as you mentioned, I just wrote a new book, which is available on Amazon, called Trumped Up: How the Politicization, how the Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy. I want to see evidence. I want to see hard evidence of crime before anybody talks about prosecuting or impeaching. So far, I have not seen hard evidence of any criminal conduct. I think there should have been a bipartisan or a nonpartisan commission like the Commission on 9/11 that looked into the whole relationship between Russia and American elections. This is not a partisan issue. This affects Democrats and Republicans alike. On the issue of Comey, this is the first I ever heard of that. I have to tell you, I follow the news. I have never heard an account that says that Comey, who I know, I don't know him well, but I've known him over the years, actually prepared a report clearing Clinton before he heard the evidence. That would very much surprised me, because I think he may have turned the election over to Donald Trump. I mean, he certainly had a major impact on the millions of voters who voted absentee between the time he said that he was reopening or relooking at the matter and the time he said that there was nothing there. So it would surprise me greatly. But look, everything should be looked into. Everything should be investigated. The facts should come out the way the facts are. And I think on all sides we have to stop politicizing the criminal justice system and stop criminalizing the political system. That's the thesis of my book, Trumped Up. It is neither a pro-Trump or an anti-Trump book. It's a pro-civil liberties book. It's a pro-Constitution book, and it's a pro-law book.
And Alan, what do you say to those who are claiming you've become a Trump apologist?
Well, read my article that I'm just writing, criticizing him on DACA. Read the article I'm just writing about how the Republicans are using the Menendez trial for political purposes. If Hillary Clinton had been elected president and people were saying lock her up, and trying to expand the espionage laws to go after her, I'd be saying the same thing. For me, it's not about politics.
Yes.
It's all about civil liberties, and the chips fall where they may. I am completely neutral when it comes to the political implications of what I think civil liberties are. I'm there for civil liberties. I'm there to protect the rights of all Americans, regardless of which party they belong to, who they voted for.
And you remain one of my real heroes, Alan. You have a unique place in the American present and in the sweep of the last 50, 60 years. And you continue to make this extraordinary contribution. I hope, I know you will never stop speaking. You will never stop writing. And I wish you and your wonderful family Shana Tova. You should have health, happiness. You continue to be creative, and as much as possible, I hope you let me chase you down and put you on JBS. Thank you, my friend.
Always. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Be well. The thoughts of Alan Dershowitz, Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School. The author of his latest book he's the author of his latest book called Trumped Up: How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy, published by Bombardier Books. It's available through Amazon, and Kindle, hard copy, both are available through Amazon, so I hope you keep it in mind. And whether you agree with Alan or disagree with him on any single issue or on all issues, he represents a perspective that's very important for all of us to hear. My thanks as always to our director, Sloan Copeland, production coordinator, Serge Goldberg, JBS's associate director, Dara Golub, editors, John McDevitt and Cordelia Siporin, and to the producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.